Now, education in Africa is at a defining crossroads. Over the few decades, access to schooling has improved significantly, with primary schools completion rising from 27% in 1971 to about 67% in recent years. Yet beneath all of this progress lies beneath all this progress lies a deep crisis, one of quality, relevance, and urgency. Today, nearly 4 out of 5 African children aged 10 cannot read and understand a simple text, and over 100 million children remain out of school across the continent. In Nigeria, the situation reflects both progress and a paradox. While primary school enrollment exceeds 90%, learning outcomes remain weak, infrastructure is inadequate, and education funding remains and continues to fall short. Now hovering around the 6 to 8% of the national budget, far below the UNESCO benchmark of 15 to 20%. At the same time, there are bright spots across Africa. Countries investing in curriculum reform, digital learning, school feeding programs, and technical education are beginning to reshape outcomes and unlock human capital. So the question now is Africa educating its people? How can this transform education into a tool for innovation, competitiveness, and global relevance? That's what we would be discussing this beautiful day. And I have an expert right here in the studio, Mr. Kenneth Idika. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Joy.
Yes, it's always wonderful to have you because you're passionate about education, you're passionate about young people and all of that. I mean, when you read about the fact that we are doing relatively better in pulling young people into the classrooms, and yet we still have in spite of this statistics that seems a bit welcoming, it's encouraging, we still have over 20 million out of school children. I keep saying it here on the show, we drive by our cars, we see children trying to clean your windshield. While it's a nuisance and you don't want that, but it's a ticking time bomb. These are children that should be in the classroom. Sure. When you look at all of this, how do you feel?
It's a disturbing reality that stares us in the face every now and then, and it's quite challenging that it looks like at some point our leaders seem to be turning a blind eye to those challenges. And like you said, a couple of countries in Africa are doing quite a lot to deal with the challenge of pulling children out of the street and ensuring that they get into the classroom. In recent time, I was listening to one program that Michelle Obama had some time ago, and she was talking about the importance of education in ensuring that people meet their desire, their yearnings, both as individuals, as nations. Okay? You know, when we say education drives development, it's not just another soundbite.
Absolutely.
We still have a whole lot to be grappling with. And I want to believe as we continue our progress in this conversation, maybe we'll be opening our eyes to some of those realities that we need to deal with. So it's like you said.
I think we should just delve into the realities at the moment, because it's quite concerning when we have this report: 80 to 90 children struggle with basic literacy at 10 years old. I'm not one that I always ask the question: who sets the standard for this? What is literacy? As long as these children are equipped for the future. I am not one to say because you don't speak English, you are not educated, or you are not skilled, and you cannot contribute to society. But my question is, have we pulled this number? If we cannot enroll them in the classrooms, is it possible to teach them skills? We are all talented. We all come with talent. So what is your say in all of this, where sometimes it seems like there is no intentionality to improve the current education models?
Okay, a quick one. Let me just point out some very critical issues that we must of necessity deal with if we have to answer clearly to the menace that is facing us as regards the issue of out-of-school children, education system generally. First of all, leadership is what drives education. If you want to look at the effectiveness of a system, look at the effectiveness of the leadership. And why I'm starting from there is because my friend, John Maxwell, says everything rises and falls on leadership.
On leadership, yeah.
If you take statistics of people who have led us in leadership between, let me cut from 1999 till date, you're supposed to see a pattern. But funny enough, there is none. I'm going to shock you with that. You know, when we talk of global standard, you check worlds, you check nations that are doing it right, and then you place yourself side by side those nations and ask yourself the vital questions. What are they doing that we're not doing? Let me start with Singapore. Singapore from 1966, they were deliberate about education. There were so many reforms that went on.
One that punishes parents that did not bring children to school, that enroll children in school.
Very critical. Exactly. Very critical.
Right.
And let me point the direction of leadership, which is the point I'm trying to make. If you check the people who have head ministries of education in Singapore, one thing stands out for you because there are three things that are critical for them. One is strategy, two is execution, and then three is precision. And for that reason, they shop for leaders from a particular constituency.
Right.
Aside from the fact that they are deliberate in terms of their educational experience, most of them have military background. And check most of them, you see that in terms of delivery, because the nation already has a big picture, they have a plan clearly spelled out. And everybody, once you come, you fall in place. And that guides them in their recruitment process of the kind of ministers that head the education ministry. If you go to China, the same thing replicates. China is deliberate about the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Right.
And that also guides them. Aside the fact that the person is going to have strong background in education, you must have a strong science background. That explains why at some point a minister of education in China was a mechanical engineer. Another minister who was an expert in computers. Because they are deliberate in guiding their children in this direction. China has a clear vision what they want to do with tech all across the world.
Exactly.
That guides them in their recruitment process. So if you come to an organization and you want to recruit, you will check what do you want the person to achieve for you, and it guides you in the skill set you look out for.
Absolutely.
So those are the things people across the world do.
So while following this thought trend, I mean, does it not matter that you have an educational expert to be properly guide a nation into whatever educational goal they have? You're mentioning those who have led the country's education, they are in tech and not necessarily studying education and understanding. I would have thought what you would be proposing would be, you know what, get someone who understands education, who is like yourself. It's actually
taken for granted because that's basic.
Right.
They are like I said, there are key skill sets you look out for.
Okay.
Yes. So being trained in education, you don't take it for granted. I was talking of Singapore. There's a point where, aside from the fact that you are a teacher, in fact, they have high standard for teachers.
Teachers, right.
You will discover that if you check their remuneration structure, teachers are up there. In fact, there's something they created like an elite structure for the teaching profession, such that you will want to desire to be a teacher. By the time they sieve out their graduate, 5% tops are pushed into teaching.
Right.
So you see that, like it's taken for granted.
Why is it different? Is it the remuneration that's poured back here?
It's vital.
Or the facilities where you even teach? I mean, as someone who is in the development space as well, sometimes you go for these events where you're speaking with children, or you're just doing a tour of some communities, and you see the dilapidated structures where these young people have to learn, and you know there is no way any child will learn in that space. But we also see resilience in these children. A lot of us grew up in those kind of spaces, and I don't think I'm doing very badly. However, it is not the best. We could do better. That cannot be the standard for future. How can we get government to prioritize education? Like you say, it's the benchmark for development. And if we want to solve insecurity, I do not understand how public office holders have not gotten to a point where I am educated, and so there are certain things I will not indulge in. So how do we propagate? I know you've been doing a lot. I would like to hear what you've been doing in that regard, holding governments to some of this. I don't think it's rocket science, but why would we not prioritize education, pull these young children into the classrooms and understand the need to fight insecurity kinetically, not necessarily all the bombs and airstrikes and all that we hear?
Okay, you see, we have challenge of funding.
I think it's deliberate, because
Nigeria
can actually prioritize funding in education.
We can do a lot better. Between 1999 and now, the highest provision that has been made for education in Nigeria budget system is 11%. Every other thing is between 3% and 5%.
Wow.
And the painful part,
what's the global
UNESCO standard is between 15 to 25 or 26%.
So we are more than 10%.
The shortfall is amazing. So, but the painful part is, aside the fact that we have not provided sufficiently, I can bet you that over 50% of that fund ends up in private pockets.
Okay, so now that brings strategies for transparency.
It's very important.
As poor, as paltry as this sum already is, there is no accountability that ensures that it even trickles down. It's handled,
because if you have provided as much as we are even looking at, that is not sufficient, and that much still hasn't gotten to where it should get to, then we are still far away from where we should be. So, but like I said, the leadership must be deliberate about this. Absolutely. Let's do a little analogy, Joy. If you're facing Gwagwalada direction, and then you're traveling at 100 kilometers per hour, it's safe to say that if you do that journey in 2 hours or 2 hours 30 minutes, you will be in Lokoja.
Absolutely.
Because you're facing a particular direction. If you're facing the same direction and your speed is, let's say, 50 kilometers per hour, we'll just say, okay, if it doesn't take you 2 hours, it's going to take you 5 hours, or 4 hours and 30 minutes, you will be in that direction. But however, you're facing a direction. You know the problem? We are not facing any direction.
We're all over the place.
In fact, there's something in molecular science they call Brownian motion. We are doing zigzag motion. We move here, we come back, no, it's not working.
But whatever happens, I mean, government in, government out, we have this conversation. There is an education plan, there is a vision. I've forgotten the Buhari's vision for education. I remember it was part of a 2020 plan, a 20-point plan. I can't remember the name of that plan. Of course, we always come with several plans. And I'm not even just talking about the federal government. In states across the country, they reel out so many beautiful plans that are supposed to be, part of the agenda for their administration or term or whatever. We still record that year in, year out. How uninterested are citizens? Because I have also witnessed where when citizens rise up to say enough is enough in these, they have to, look at the numbers. How many public office holders do we have? How many citizens do we have? Is it that we are all complacent? We are not seriously taking this to be as important, as priority as it should be? Let's leave government now. How can citizens awaken government to their responsibilities? And is there something all of us can collectively be doing?
Yeah, we all have a role to play, okay? When we have spaces, we keep driving to the ears of the government for as long as they would hear, that these are the needs of the people. But you know, challenging is we have a whole lot of population that are docile.
Okay.
People don't, for as long as you're taking care of your own little space, it doesn't matter what happens to
Not to mention when
person.
you complain, you get a bag of rice.
Well, that's painful. You know, when we it's when we.
Is it true or not?
You're correct.
Okay.
You're correct, because we weaponize poverty. We use poverty against the people. We deliberately keep the people poor so that when you talk so much, somebody just goes to the other side and then.
But I mean, Kenneth, I get that 100%. You want to keep the people poor. You don't want them educated enough to have a say and all of that. You want to have I get that. But we are suffering it insecurity. We are reading in articles and investigations how these young people are being recruited day in, day out. These are children who, if you catch them early and better, they will not even want to be in those kind of space or settings. Yeah. So, yeah, we are suffering. Our public office holders cannot even move from one place to the other. They are afraid themselves. Yeah. So, can you not see? Am I naive to think you should see the importance?
Well, the thing is that it's not the fact that they don't see. You know, when our leaders live in their high hopes and they feel, well, everything down there, it doesn't matter.
Right.
One day, that reality will come knocking. It could be immediate, it could be remote, but that reality will deal with it at some point. So the issue of trying to solve insecurity and then we are not responding to the educational needs of our people is just playing the ostrich. For as much as we want to do, for as much as we claim we are doing, and we are not coming back to deal fundamentally with the needs of education, I tell you the truth. You said it when we started. You just move into the street of Abuja and you'll be shocked the kind of things you see. And these are children who should be in classrooms.
Exactly.
And you see that we cannot, can't we, are we not bothered? But whatsoever you do, except the leadership wakes up. There was a point where the elementary school system was set up, okay? But we didn't follow through with that. The structures were put in place, but the problem is when we even try to do some things, we don't put the system that will make it to continue to run even when we are not there.
Exactly. I agree with you. But why do you think it failed? Because we, at the time, when I think Jonathan, President Goodluck Jonathan had came up with that initiative, we appreciated it because it married, it infused the culture or tradition or religion of them, which is important, which was the number one reason why they did not embrace formal education. Yes. So it embraced that with ensuring there is direction in the child's education system. Yeah. And I'm all for innovative plans and systems that are relatable to the people. So this was a good one. Okay, you're afraid that the formal classrooms would rid your child of that religious background. No problem, we would infuse it, but we would also give this child a structured education that gets them to contribute to society at the long run with skills and talents that would be blossoming. But why then did it fail?
Well, part of it is policy somersault, or safe to say, when leaders come, everybody come with whatsoever it is that are their interests. And when there is a particular policy that you feel is not driving your personal interest, you mortgage that just to make sure that you drive whatsoever it is that is a personal agenda. That's part of the thing that keeps us where we are. But however, recently we are trying to review the curriculum. If you check,
Kenneth, we've been here before reviewing the curriculum. I watch children these days who come up and they are telling you draw a computer. It's no longer relevant. Because the child no longer sees the desktop that we grew up with.
People all over the world situate education within the space of their current realities, their value system, and all that. Those are the things that drive education. And you must of necessity, okay, look at, I was trying to say something about the curriculum. Look at where we came from. We have a whole lot of work loaded per term. And then every time we are rushing to get a whole lot of things covered up. And we see ourselves moving fast, but there is no depth. And because of that shallowness of our delivery, we churn out people who can't compete globally.
Absolutely.
So for that reason, there is need to revisit that issue, look at the content, look at the depth. If you check British system of education, there is need for depth. They are deliberate about that.
Right.
You're not just teaching for a child. It's not for the sake of teaching. You must be deliberate about ensuring that there is depth in your delivery. So that makes a whole lot of difference, because when you wait on the other end, you see that this product and this product aren't the same.
Are not the same. Wow, you just mentioned something very important. And I remember such a time, I think it was in Kaduna State, where the governor at the time, El-Rufai, had subjected teachers to basic examination, promotional examination. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And those papers leaked, and we saw how...
Don't worry.
We saw the teachers could not even respond.
We have seen a situation where a teacher couldn't comfortably even read through, you get. So those are realities.
Right. So, well, I brought that up because it's one thing to say pull them into the classrooms. It's another thing to say ensure their facilities that are are available for these young people. But the most important is who is impacting this knowledge, and that's where we'll go for a short break. When we come back from that break, it will be time to discuss those individuals tasked with this important responsibility. Some of them unsung heroes in impacting for the next generation. This is Razep Africa. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome to Razep Africa, the heartbeat of the continent in one show. Here, we celebrate Africa not as a headline, but as a home full of ideas, courage, flavor, and future. This is where we talk about everything Africa. The politics that shape our nations, the innovations that shift our economies, the culture that colors our lives, the challenges we face with honesty, and the victories we are building one story at a time. On this show, no topic is swept aside. We are unfiltered and we are intentional. We bring you experts from across the continent and the world. Voices that know, voices that live the African experience, voices that are shaping the next chapter of our story. Let your spirit rise. We don't just tell Africa's story, we own it. Join Joy Asonye on Razep Africa, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Global Television.
If you're just joining us, this is Razep Africa, where we are discussing the future of education and our young people. How ready are they for the jobs that will be available in the future? It's very important conversation. Education in Africa, the urgency of a future-ready system. And in the studio to discuss all of this with me has been Idika Kenneth, and he's an education expert, an advocate really, who has been doing a lot around ensuring our young people are back in schools. We got that conversation to how important it is to improve facilities in our primary schools and schools, broadly speaking. But we also have gotten to how important it is for quality teachers. It remains a challenge across Africa. Because what reforms are needed for teacher training, motivation, and retention. Because I remember such a time where our teachers were leaving the shores of Nigeria and Africa because they were sought after all over the world. But teacher training is very important. Where are we in all of this?
Well, we haven't done so much, though a few things are happening here and there. Okay, the stakeholders in the entire teaching thing, little here, little there. But you see, there must be a deliberate drive to ensure that we have the best of us involved in teaching. And why I'm saying that is, if you check how people get involved in teaching, you'll be sure that over 80% of the people didn't want to come into teaching.
Yeah, it was just the job that was available.
Yeah, they have even searched and there's no other option. They say, okay, go and even look for teaching.
Oh my goodness.
And people just stroll into teaching, not having any interest whatsoever. But that can be corrected. If the system is such that we deliberately create a package that makes the teaching profession attractive. What I'm saying that is, for one, I'm a very strong advocate for teachers should be well taken care of.
Absolutely, the welfare is not to be debated.
If you solve that, I can bet you. What I'm saying is important to deal with that issue is because so many persons that eventually come into teaching were people that struggled with certain part of their studies at their formative age. And because of that, you cannot give what you don't have.
Absolutely.
I'll give you a practical example. When I was sent to do my youth service in Borno State, I came into the classroom and I wrote a very simple sum on the board. And I was looking for an SS1, SS2 class.
Okay.
Simple equation like x plus 5 is equal to 7. What is x?
Right.
At least I was waiting for somebody to just say, simple logic, this is. Nobody responded. I discovered that they were all afraid of mathematics as a subject. So, having identified that, I said, well, there's some things that we need to resolve first before we go into this teaching. And good thing I could speak Hausa language. So I just went in to do the pet talking, telling them that, no, this thing is not a monster, so don't be afraid. Relax. And then we began to walk through the path. By the time I was done 1 year, I could set a quadratic equation on the board and over 10 students are rushing to come and solve.
Oh, fantastic.
It wasn't rocket science. It was because it was one of my strongest points. Science, mathematics, I could do it with relative ease.
Right. So it was easy to impart.
It was very easy to communicate. So you can't give what you don't have.
Absolutely. And I think that's the reason why a lot of us, I mean, when you asked that question and you said it was a simple one, I was already cracking my head. I'm just telling myself, I hope you really are rhetorical. You don't expect me to respond to it.
But that is it.
Yeah.
So, and if you could, when I told you that Singapore deliberately set a standard so that 5% of their top performing graduates will move them into teaching.
Right.
Because they have come to ask themselves, we don't have crude oil, we don't have mineral resources. All we have is our human resources. So we must be deliberate about what we do with our human resources.
This is a country that was a write-off.
Yes. So, and for that reason, they had to deliberately create a system where it's interesting to come into teaching. So the best of the brain
were sent back.
They want to go there because they know that the government has their welfare.
But there was such a time such a time that was the thing in Nigeria.
Well, not as much as that.
Maybe not to that level,
yes.
Because I remembered that my father had a job waiting in teaching immediately he graduated, but only because he graduated with a certain level. It was such a revered profession yes. At the time that he talks about it with such nostalgia. I mean, looking back now and I go, my goodness. But I remember it was a big thing that the Ministry of Education had identified him and a lot more who had gotten like the first class and all of that. So it excited me. Till next tomorrow, my father, every moment is a teaching moment with my father, So I understand that it is. These aren't concepts that we cannot, bring back into the country and adopt, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa. So, Mike, I guess my next question would be the private school, public school thing. Everyone is now rushing into the private school. What's the regulation like in private schools? Because it's one thing to say, yes, the better option is a private school, but we also do not want to lose standard in those private schools as well. So when you look at the sector and the private school, public school, what comes to mind as to what can we improve?
Oh, well, generally, there's a challenge. Infrastructure, when we began to talk, you talked about infrastructure decay across. And well, you can't solve infrastructure if the funding is not available.
Absolutely.
Right? So, and nature abhors vacuum. When the government can't fill in the space properly,
private sector comes in, right?
Come in. And people who come into who come as private investors, let me use that word, in education, they are not coming, it's not charity. For
the love of reducing the out-of-school children in Nigeria.
Yes, they are solving the problem. They also want to have
social
their own stuff dealt with. But there are still a few persons who try to bring in that mix of the private sector concept and then ensure that parents are not breaking their back,
right,
trying to achieve quality. I know in one other forum we have discussed this. I can beat my chest and say we are doing as much in that regards, because when you talk of quality education in FCT, what comes to your mind quickly is you have to pay through your notes.
Exactly.
In fact, there is as much as you need to pay. But I also told you that some of those things are actually a matter of pride for parents. There are some parents who want to say, my child is attending so and so school, I pay 1 point something, pay 2 million, I pay 10 million. But at the end of the day, all of us will come and level up.
Last.
All of us will level up. So, yeah, it's quite challenging because parents desire to get quality.
Absolutely.
But in as much as they try to get that quality, they don't want to be under the load of financial burden that they cannot bear.
Okay.
So, trying to create a balance between that is a very important responsibility that a few of us are trying our best to see how we fill in that gap. But it's quite challenging. It's not easy because while you're dealing with that, you're battling with getting enough to deal with teacher remuneration that I talked about earlier.
Absolutely. But I think I spoke too fast when we were talking about the curriculum, because it's not news that everyone knows how outdated Africa's curriculum is, and not aligning with the job market. Like you say, we have from admission, where a young person is trying to get admitted into an interesting course that interests these individuals where they are identified. You see the politics that is brought into it, and so because there's so much competition, we see young people say, well, I wanted to study architecture, but all I got was years, and I am forced to do this. Sometimes it is all the way 360 degrees, 90 degrees away from what your direction, but because you really want not to miss out altogether, you find yourself doing it. How can we improve in that sector?
Okay, well, part of the thing that took China where they found themselves in education is there's something they call competitiveness. Deliberately, depending on competency. And it's one of the things we are trying to bring in this current curriculum. The 2025, I've taken time to study it. On the face value, it looks like an improvement over what we used to have.
Okay.
There are 5 key areas that this current curriculum tries to address.
2025
reviewed
curriculum for education.
Yes, yes. There are 5 key things it tries to. One is the subject load. Okay.
Instead of the
too many
16.
We have to cut down a whole lot of that. But however, I have a challenge with that still, because some of the things that are removed in terms of subject number are also compensated for in terms of content.
Right. Infused into
somewhere.
Right.
So so like I said, we are still looking at that. As we look at implementation, we can come to say, okay, fine, this and this are. So we are still going through that review stage of that curriculum. The second thing it dealt with is the issue of vocational skills. Deliberately bringing in vocational skills.
Right.
Then it brought in language, very important. Then number 3, it brought in history, Nigerian history. In that aspect of skills, it also deliberately brought in science, technology. Technology using artificial intelligence and all that, it deliberately brought that in. And then,
absolutely necessary and important.
Yes, and then number 5, it it's now remodeled the competency-based approach that I was talking about that China adopted. You know, you can set an exam here in Nigeria, and then what somebody else is writing in Yobe, maybe the same exam. At the end of the day, the standard of assessment begins to vary. But
it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. So if there is anything that is making somebody from one other part of the country not to be able to meet up, we go deal with that issue.
Right.
Not to come and change the standard because because you feel you want to create a space for it's not things like that.
I mean, I saw how ridiculous that is, where in certain parts of the country you give them a break. The cutoff mark, that's what it's called.
Yes.
The cutoff mark is reduced.
Somebody is giving 20 something, somebody else is dealing with 200 and something.
Exactly. And you ask yourself, at the end of the day, we are going to postulate.
Come on, and fight the same thing.
And these are individuals who are supposed to be given the same access to professional courses. You know, and meanwhile, you got 20 to even have the opportunity.
So there's something else about when people have a particular course direction they want to face. These are the things they have to deal with to find themselves. And then one day we were having a conversation in another forum, and somebody said, I wanted my child to study law in a particular university. I went there, and then somebody directly asked him, who are you? And the implication of that, who are you, is, are you
do you know someone that knows
somebody? Yes, are you a this, are you a that? If you don't fit into any of this narrative, and you say you want to try to come and study,
I will tell my story, because some of us went through that as well. I mean, who's your father is actually what happens, where you actually have,
and it's bad for our system.
Most worrying is when you have the cutoff mark. My father is very old school, and I share this experience all the time. Immediately I got above that cutoff mark. I can't remember what it is at the time, but he relaxed. He's like, don't worry, you will get admission, absolutely. But I was young, but I saw the hustle that my friends were having to do in spite of getting it. My friends like, don't worry, maybe you are not in the first, second list because there are people who had way more than you have. I know it's not people, don't be naive. But unfortunately, that's what young people are subjected to. As against in other parts of the world where your intellect determines, the competition is no longer. I'm sure I will have an opportunity because my father is such a person in government, but more of you need to really study to get it. Have parents become complacent in this as well, because I see parents hustling day and night. Gone are the days where your parents will say, oh, you're not burning the candle like you will fail. And if you fail, you're in trouble in this house. Well, now the parents give you a break, give you phones that distract you, allow you to play around, as long as when it's time, they can always hustle a space for you.
Parents need to wake up, actually, because it bothers me. I noticed that recently we are beginning to churn out some bunch of very, I'm trying to use the right word. Our children are beginning to become complacent, so to speak, okay? Because in one hand, you feel, okay, I can chase out things for them. In another hand, from the system where they are coming from, some persons are making them feel, no, you don't really have to crack your head so much to get XYZ done.
Don't worry.
Somebody will sort out somebody. But when you are faced with the reality of, if you don't work yourself out, if you don't save yourself, you will drown. Then you will do everything necessary to carve out a space for yourself.
Absolutely.
And why is that so? Okay, let me just mention this. Sometimes I've had teachers who come around and they say, okay, let us change the class work or homework. We call it home fun.
Right.
Class
it's no longer fun. It's no longer work. It's no longer work.
It's fun.
So this generation,
it sounds so interesting. And I said, no, please stop this.
This generation have the threshold for their mental health. Don't
stress them. Really? There's a time that China deliberately created a workload for children. In fact, it's recently that they're beginning to tone down on some of those. They deliberately created workload where you make sure that you have minimal time to be distracted. And as a matter of fact, every time is work time, including those times that you think you want to play.
Yeah.
They deliberately create a process or a system where...
Exactly. I had a friend who discussed it with me, where if your focus is in, let's say, medicine,
Yes.
even as a 3-year-old, after the classroom, you go into a hub where you see simulations of body parts, you have to learn it from the word go. By the time you finished your high school, a graduate in Nigeria, you would speak like a graduate in African country, because this is something that's so natural to you. You have learned the human anatomy from school.
The content are deliberately designed.
Designed, exactly.
These things don't happen by chance. They are deliberately designed, So, but the other point I was going to make is, we have a culture here. We have value system, okay? And when we design our curriculum, we try to situate it within the space of our value system. And one of the things we value very well is hard work. We from our African perspective, we believe that you need to work hard.
Absolutely.
So you don't get to a point where you begin to downplay hard work and then you overemphasize something else just because you want to appear correct. You want to please certain constituency. Right? It doesn't always work like that. The reality is that at the end of the day, you will face whatsoever every other person across the world is facing.
True.
So
true. That's true right there.
Let's wake up.
But let's also, before I let you go, quickly speak about this overproduction of graduates.
Okay.
It seems like people want to first of all see your certificate. It doesn't matter if you have the skill for it, but we're still very certificate conscious. Yeah. So
how can say it should be certificate?
It should be certificate. So how can we strike that important balance across Africa between academic education and vocational and technical training, where it's about what you know and not the certificate for it? And we've also seen a lot of young people who are trying to amass as many as they can because it gives them an edge in the market. And frankly, when you come along, you have 2 masters here, like you must know what you're doing, and
Yeah, well, you see, there was a point I talked about the speed of our learning, devoid of depth. Those are the things we need to look at. But of course, we also need to be of necessity deliberate in the direction. The issue of vocational skills and several other skills, as a matter of fact, we must deliberately infuse them. When somebody is going through the university to study a 4-year course, and you are supposed to be graduate of, take for instance, engineering. There are so many things you're dealing with, okay, within our Nigeria system. There are so many things you're dealing with. Aside from the fact that the package is not properly designed for you to get depth in your learning. Then you have the issue of in and out of industrial action to deal with. So by the time you're going through the university, you have spent about 6 years dealing with a 4-year program.
Yeah.
And whenever the strike, within that 6 years, as a matter of fact, 3 years of it, you are out of school. 3 years of it has gone to strike. So whenever the strike comes, when you resume school, you will have like 3 months or 2 months or 1 month to deal with something you should have dealt with in 6 months with relative ease. So everybody's business now is just work very hard, do whatever you can, just
finish that semester
pass, already. Just pass. And at the end of the day, we bring out graduates who can't carry out basic tasks. I'm telling you, you have, maybe your organization, you've had the opportunity of having core members, you need to be dragging them.
Are you kidding?
You need to. Sometimes I'm pained because it's disturbing. It's disturbing. These are things you should have naturally taken for granted, because by the time you have gone through 4 years, you should have acquired certain skill sets.
Absolutely.
Certain skill sets. But you end up discovering that some of those sets are not there. So you have to come and start training that person all afresh.
Right.
And that's where we have the issue of our graduate training thing and all that. So these are things that should have been taken care of. When you come there, you should actually build on that and get into something higher. But
we have
unfortunately,
a beautiful structure that should have done that as well. I mean, educational structure where you have the internship, you have
of course,
half into your education. It was supposed to give you first-hand practical job
exposure,
experience and exposure. But I don't know what often happens there. But
these are the things, the challenges we mentioned, the issue of in and out.
So I mean, we really are running out of time. So my question would be, what would you tell governments listening to you at the moment? What is the advice you have for government, parents, young people listening right now in ensuring that they are ready for the future of work?
Where every one of us needs to come together and take ownership of our educational system. Everybody, because not doing that has left us sour taste in the mouth. So if we come together, private sectors, government, policymakers, everybody, and say, see, the truth is we are not getting this thing right. Can we come together and please, let's collectively now chart a common course.
Right.
So much so that if all of us come and say, okay, this is the direction we want to go. China recently are reviewing their 15th 5-year plan. 5 years they deliberately review plan for education. So they are just working on the 15th review. And these are things that are clear and deliberate. So if you come in as a minister of education, you already know where everybody's headed.
Yeah.
Not doing that, well, you wake up one day and then you have a professor this as minister of education. Another day you wake up, you have a Minister Wike as a minister of education as a point. Another day you have a Malam as a minister. And at the end of the day, you look for the common denominator. Why did we choose these people?
Right, and you can't find it.
The skill set that is not pointing in a particular direction. Wow. So these are things that we must of necessity resolve. When we do that, when we deal with that purposeful design of our educational system, pointing to a particular direction, everybody, if you immediately you come in, you know this is where we are heading. So it doesn't matter who is on the driver's seat. Everybody is heading to that direction. Absolutely. Then private sectors, other people who are stakeholders, everybody will fall in line.
Right.
And everything begins to, in fact, it gets to a point where our autopilot.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter who is heading where or what, we know that we are heading to.
And then the individual does not really matter because the
system has been designed to head in a particular direction. We must of necessity deal with that.
That's a beautiful one. Thank you so much, Kenneth Idika, for always talking and speaking so passionately about this concept of education.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
And well done for the work that you do.
It's my pleasure, really. And I pray that we continue to have more capacity to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I give you I give you a thumbs up, and I pray that you do have more capacity. But this is where we end today's edition of RASEP Africa. It's been wonderful having this conversation on getting ready for the future of work. Well, we have identified these issues. I hope those listening would add value and ensure that it is implemented. Until next time, my name is Dr. Joy Asaye. We will be back with more. Have a wonderful rest of the day.